Yeah, I'll let you share like what we're running into so much of people originating notes and the servicing they're thinking they're doing.
Yeah, because a lot of people are coming from a traditional real estate. So they're thinking about rentals, which is fine. And rentals is a great.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
This
is scary.
But then the problem is they have a monthly payment of say $650. And that $650, they'll just record it as $650 every month coming in. They haven't even touched amortization. And what happens if 1 month they're paying 625 and then the next month they pay 653 and then they pay, a late fee here and a late fee there. And all of those things, if you're just taking it dollar for dollar, that could be a huge mess. And like, let's say that the payment actually, according to the terms of the loan are actually $648, but you're collecting $650. Well, that affects what the principal balance is over time. So you can track it yourself, but unless you have specific software for notes, not for rentals, you're not going to have accurate numbers.
We're running into a lot of people using apartments.com.
I never heard of that till like a couple of weeks ago. I go, what the?
Yeah. So when I asked for a pay history, they showed me a list of dates and payments.
Or another thing they're doing is they'll collect principal and interest and tax and insurance.
Yep.
But then they don't separate it out. So they'll have, a $700 payment. Well, $650 of that is the principal and interest, but then they were attributing the extra $50 to the note as well. No.
Yeah.
That's let me
tax
say
insurance is a separate thing.
This is really important. And then Max will be able to chime in and appreciate this too. When Dodd-Frank came into play, okay, it was, everybody goes, oh my God, this is horrible. They're trying to cut the seller financing guy out of the middle because they're taking deals from the bank, whatever. It's the best thing that happened to somebody that creates notes. And here's the reason why. Because you got to use a disinterested third party like Call the Underwriter to come in and do something else. And guess who pays for that? I don't pay for it. The borrower pays for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Period. All right. Yeah. Just like they pay for the servicing, at least when I write my deals. So guess what I'm going to do? If I'm going to have, if the borrower is going to be responsible for that, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to find the best underwriter to do my underwriting. I'm going to find the best servicer to service my notes. I'm going to find the best attorneys to create my legal documentation and all of that stuff. Because we're writing these notes for 15, 20, 30 years. I want to do it one time and get it right and not ever have to screw around and worry about it again. Because here's the problem that people don't think about when they sell that property and they do seller financing. And they go, okay, I'll take the cash flow. That's great. Okay. But here's the problem. Of all those people that at 30 billion that we were talking about, they're individuals. They're individuals, not entities, right? So life gets in the way. Events happen. People get sick, lose their jobs, have weddings, need new cars, go to college, all those things. And so there's going to be a point at some point in the future that they're going to need to, maybe liquidate. So you want to make sure when it's time to liquidate and you haven't want to sell it, you get maximum value to what you're referring to earlier.
Absolutely. Yep. So let's back up for a second, right? We have different people out there, part of our watching right now. Nick, you don't do any kind of wraps, right? You strictly stick with seller finance notes, correct?
Technically I only do wraps.
Okay.
Just by the nature of the definition. However, I don't necessarily stay in them.
Right. So for those people in notes, wraps is kind of a new phrase. I've heard of it. It's not my understanding, Jersey doesn't allow it, but it's interesting. So when you create this wrap, what are some of the documents you need to have so that if it defaults, you can prove the case that your new borrower defaulted and you can foreclose on stuff? Yeah. And the fact that what do you need to get from the original borrower to make that wrap successful?
Yeah. So so technically everything that we do is a wrap because there's some underlying debt that's already in place. Okay. So by definition, it is a wrap. So if I have my own lien on the property and I leaned it, say I own a property and I leaned it with a company or something like that, and I go sell it, And before I sell, because I don't table fund the sale of the note, right? So if I did that, then I probably wouldn't need to do a wrap, but I have to do a wrap even for a couple of weeks because I have to get the everything recorded and then I have to sell the note. Okay.
So let me clarify what wrap is for those note buyers, because that was unknown knowledge to me. What that word meant is you have $100,000 first lien in place. A seller, for whatever reason, we won't get into whys, decides to give me a property that may be worth $200,000. I take over that $100,000 first lien, and then I create a secondary $100,000, but combine the other 100 to make a $200,000 note for a new borrower. I'm going to pay the first lien continuously or pay it off, either way. And then I will make the proceeds of a $100,000 gain on that situation, right? The transfer deed happens. What do you need from that original borrower to make that happen?
Well, that's a great question. So I would defer that to my attorneys that are doing all the doc prep.
Yep.
You know, because you're going to need stuff like power of attorneys, at least limited power.
So let's back up power attorney. What is a power attorney generally for in just general terms?
It depends on what what kind of transaction you're doing. But let's say you buy the property subject to, which means an existing debt of some type. Okay. And you need to be able to communicate with the underlying lender, and you're not going to go back to the seller to do it because you need to get an updated statement, or you need to get an escrow analysis done or something like that, right? It's limited from the standpoint it's more for informational purposes, not for financial purposes, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. So, those are the main things, because it depends on how you acquire, right? But the wrap just means that there's some underlying debt in place that causes to be wrapped. So we have to disclose that. You have to write the documents to your buyer and let them know that. It's done through the attorneys that are creating the lender documents. On our side, we do not usually keep the wrap mortgage in place very long. Okay. For example, we buy a lot of stuff using hard money or private money. Okay.
That's it.
So let's do a quick analogy. I'm all in it for $150,000. Okay. I'm in it for $150,000, and I borrowed it with private money or hard money. Okay. Well, they're going to lien that property. So they're going to show up as a lien holder. Okay. Well, the only way they're going to release that lien for that money is to get paid in full, right? More than unless you're doing a whole nother thing, but they're going to want to get paid in full. So the only way, what we have to do, or what we do, and we let them know, and it's not, then no one has a problem with it. We have to create wrap documents first. Okay. So it's almost like buying it subject to the existing $150,000 hard money loan in the wrap documents, but we already know what we're going to do. Once that note is created with our wrap buyer and it's recorded, then we can go and take the note, sell it. Okay. And then if you're a note buyer, you're not going to buy that note unless you're in the first lien position, if that's what you're buying. So the proceeds that come in from that is what actually goes to pay off the seller and get the lien released. Gotcha. So that's what a wrap does.
When you sell the note, you are paying off that
it has to get paid
underlying
off.
Debt.
Well, that's the only way I do it.
Yeah. And for me, that's my preference. We just talked to somebody this week where they would keep that outstanding loan out there, which is fine.
Some guys do that. So what we'll do sometimes, and I don't want to get off in the weeds on that, but if we get that seller carrying that to us, then we might do a what's called substitution of collateral, right? So it lets me go do whatever I want on the wrap side. And if I sell or do whatever, they just want to get the payments. A lot of people just want the payments. So we'll just continue to make payments and then replace it with some other type of, like property or asset that allows us to let them lien that, because they still want to have their money protected in a lien position. So, that's pretty high advanced stuff. I mean, for most people, the strategies of what I think where we're at right now, where I think the biggest bang for the buck is we deal with a lot of landlords, right? So there's a lot of landlords out there that are just getting tired of being a landlord.
Yep.
And so how do you take the landlord and convert them from being a landlord into a lien lord, right? how to control versus own. They want cash flow, but they don't want to be, dealing with tenants anymore. So this is the strategy you do, and you can structure, and they can stay as much of a part of the deal. Look, you don't have to sell 100% of the whole note, right? Or the whole transaction. You can create a first and a second, sell the first, keep the second, or you can sell a partial, right? I mean, you guys do both of that. But getting back to what I was saying before, when we talk about why we write a first lien and a second lien. So when I go to sell the first lien, and I have it written at a 70%, for example, investment to value versus a 90%, I don't have to discount it as much because the note buyer is in a much more favorable risk position. Less risk position.
I wanted to just, from what we've been told, correct us if we're wrong, what we're hearing is you need to get a power of attorney to allow the new subject to buyer to speak to the first lien and to pay off, get the payoff balance and things like that, and have the ability to speak to them, and then get a what was the other paperwork where you get a authorization to speak on their behalf. I'm going to put in our chat, by the way, the YouTube channel, so that you guys can see the replay. What people are asking for.
And I would say this: if you're going to start, because here's the way I look at it. I'm all about disclosure. I am not I don't teach or educate on subject to. Okay, there's a lot of people out there that do and do a great job of it. But here's what I love about it: it still comes into the funnel to create the mortgage to a seller finance buyer. And then once it's there, then that's when it comes into the note world, right? Mm-hmm. Now we have these notes that we're able to creatively structure to our benefit on whether we want to stay in it or we want to exit out by liquidating it. That's the beauty of what we're talking about here, in my opinion. It doesn't really matter if it's a seller finance deal and the seller will carry, or it's sub 2, or you go borrow private money and do it, or you already own it. The exit for me and the structure on the back end never changes.
There's some questions coming in. We're right now live on Facebook, LinkedIn, I think Twitter as well. So, so one of the questions came in was from Cindy. I'm glad to see Cindy on. We have a bunch of people coming on. Is what happens? I mean, if the property sells, there's a call right from the bank. How do you?
They have the option of calling.
The option of calling, you're right.
Yes.
How do you avoid that option of call that the note already has in it? That, as the question says, get around the original lender, call the loan, since most existing loans are not assumable.
I don't know. Yeah. They have the right to call the note, no question about it. But I don't know. I've never had one called.
So I remember this question from a conference I went to in 2010. And since then, every single time I've heard it brought up, the question then goes out: has anybody ever had that happen to them? Zero. It is. Here's where the problem usually happens. Okay. The problem usually happens in the fact that